We live our lives surrounded by stories that shape our world. These stories are passed down and taught as fundamental truths. But what if the reality we perceive is not the full picture, but a carefully constructed version of it? The most powerful structures are those that are never questioned at all. It stops us from asking the most dangerous question of all: who truly benefits from the way things are? This is the journey of critical thinking, daring to look at the world with fresh eyes. We will explore the idea that the major institutions guiding humanity may not have our best interests at heart. The goal is to start a conversation, to encourage a deeper level of scrutiny. Religion and government appear different. One deals with the spiritual, the other with the practical, but are they truly separate? Both provide frameworks for behavior, create identity, demand loyalty, and have systems of rewards and punishments. Both speak with authority, discouraging questioning. Ceremony and ritual reinforce their power. They resemble two arms of the same body, managing populations. Both organize human behavior on a mass scale. Is this similarity a coincidence? Or a strategy to keep power in the hands of a few? To navigate this complex territory, we need a guide. Mulat Tazebew. You won't see him on mainstream news because his work challenges the institutions that control those channels. Tazebew is a critical thinker, independent researcher, and a voice for those who dare to look beyond the official story. He encourages us to build our own understanding. Driven by unease, he began investigating ancient texts and philosophical traditions. Tazebew argues that religion and government are engineered systems designed to centralize power and ensure obedience. His perspective is crucial, providing a framework for understanding our world and offering a new lens on history. We present his analysis as a starting point for your own inquiry. Imagine the primary goal of powerful institutions isn't what they claim. What if promises of salvation or freedom are tools for compliance and control? This is the grand deception. Stated goals are marketing, designed to win trust. The real hidden agenda is simpler: control. Control over thought, action, and belief. Systems of power manage people, convincing them to police themselves, adopting beliefs that serve the powerful. This deception is maintained through constant repetition of a curated story, dismissing contradictory information. We live in an engineered psychological environment, a grand theater where we're unaware of the director. This investigation aims to pull back the curtain, examining evidence not as conspiracy but as a plausible hypothesis. What if control is the real game? If the agenda is control, what are the tools used to achieve it? These tools are often hidden in plain sight, disguised as sources of wisdom, justice, or education. They are the foundational documents and institutions that we are taught to revere. On one hand, we have holy books. On the other hand, we have foundational legal documents. Both serve as the ultimate source of authority. These texts are presented as the bedrock of our moral and social order. Beyond the texts, we have the institutions that interpret and enforce them. In the religious sphere, we have churches, mosques, and temples. In the government sphere, we have courts, parliaments, and schools. Finally, we have the rituals that bring these texts and institutions to life. They are the tools used to build and maintain the invisible walls of our mental prison. We've laid the groundwork for our investigation, introducing the idea that religion and government may be twin systems designed for control. We will confront the possibility of a grand deceptive agenda, where the true goal is the management of our thoughts and behaviors. This challenges the very foundations of what many of us hold to be true. This documentary is an invitation to join a process of inquiry. Over the course of this journey, we will delve much deeper into these areas. We will put the official narratives on trial and dissect these systems piece by piece. This is your invitation to become a detective. The subject of the investigation is the very nature of the society you live in. We encourage you to watch with a skeptical eye, to question our claims as much as you question the claims of the establishment. It is to develop the skills of critical investigation, to empower you to see the world for yourself. The path ahead is uncertain, but the journey is essential. According to Mulat Tazebew, to understand modern control, we must look back to its prototype: religion. It was the original blueprint to unify and manage populations under a single ideology, not from spiritual awakening, but a technology of power to direct human behavior. How do you get people to cooperate, follow rules, and sacrifice for a cause? They created a system that governed thoughts and beliefs, a complete package for living. It was a comprehensive operating system for the human mind. Religion aimed to install a policeman inside every person's head. Its methods became the bedrock upon which later systems of control, including modern government, would be built. It is about understanding the original blueprint to see how its designs are still being used today. According to Mulat Tazebew, the cornerstone of any religious control system is the creation of an ultimate, unquestionable authority. You need a God. This divine authority is invisible, all-powerful, and all-knowing. The genius of this concept lies in its unfalsifiability, placing the burden of proof on the doubter. The rules are seen as the sacred decrees of a supernatural being, transforming obedience into a moral duty. It is typically described as omniscient, the ultimate surveillance tool. This fosters constant self-policing. It is a brilliant mechanism for ensuring compliance from the inside out. Once a divine authority is established, how does God communicate His will? This is where the priesthood comes in, a special class claiming a unique connection to the divine. They are the gatekeepers, the official interpreters of God's word. The power of this priestly class is immense. To challenge the priest is to challenge his divine mandate and God himself. The masses are not encouraged to interpret the divine will for themselves, making them dependent on the priesthood. They became the exclusive editors of the divine narrative. This gatekeeper role solidifies the control system. By positioning themselves as the sole channel to the divine, they consolidate enormous social and psychological power. Every effective system of control needs a way to reward conformity and punish dissent. In religion, this is achieved through the promise of an afterlife, split into heaven and hell. As Mulat Tazebew explains, this framework is a masterclass in behavioral management, creating the ultimate carrot and stick. The promise of heaven is the most magnificent reward imaginable, encouraging followers to endure hardship. The threat of hell is the most terrifying punishment, a powerful deterrent against disobedience. Tazebew argues that heaven and hell are brilliant administrative tools, providing a system of justice with no enforcement costs. A belief system must be embedded into the daily lives of its followers. This is the role of ritual and repetition. Actions shape beliefs just as much as beliefs shape actions. The core tenets are transformed into deeply ingrained habits. It is about emotional and behavioral indoctrination. When thousands gather to perform the same actions, a powerful emotional contagion occurs. This creates a sense of unity, a feeling of being part of something much larger than oneself. Repetition is the engine of this indoctrination. This constant cycle ensures that the core messages are never far from the follower's mind. This is a fundamental principle of memory and learning. This ceaseless repetition creates deep neural pathways, making the religious framework the default mode of thinking. They are often designed to physically embody the core principles of the belief system. They are physical training exercises for the mind. Ritual and repetition build the prison of belief within the follower's own psyche. Humans are social creatures with a deep need to belong. Religious systems expertly harness this need, offering community, support, and shared values. However, this belonging is conditional, granted in exchange for adherence to the group's beliefs and behaviors. Voicing dissent carries the risk of ostracism. This creates an us versus them mentality, reinforcing the group's narrative. The threat of exclusion enforces compliance, especially for lifelong members. The individual suppresses doubts to maintain social connections. The comforting feeling of community becomes a gilded cage. For any system to be indispensable, it must solve a problem people can't on their own. Mulat Tazebew argues that ingenious religious systems engineered the problem they solve. They introduce a concept creating a universal need, a fundamental flaw in the human condition. This is original sin, or a similar idea of innate human imperfection. It places every person from birth in a position of guilt and inadequacy, born wrong and broken. This creates a need for an external agent to save them. The religious system positions itself as the only solution, holding the exclusive key to redemption. The priests are the only doctors who can cure the disease they diagnosed, creating dependency. It shifts control external, placing salvation in the institution's hands. Tazebew says original sin is the ultimate marketing strategy. Convince everyone they're sick from birth, then sell the lifelong cure. Religious authority needs a solid foundation, the sacred text. Mulat Tazebew identifies the holy book, be it the Bible, the Quran, the Vedas, or the Torah, as a critical tool for codifying control. Presented as the direct, infallible word of God, its authority is absolute. Questioning it becomes blasphemy, removing it from normal discourse. The sacred text functions as a constitution, laying down laws and moral codes. Priests justify commands by quoting the holy book, enforcing divine law. The text's ambiguity ensures the priestly class remains essential for interpretation, allowing adaptation without altering the text itself. The text is a fixed anchor, its interpretation, a flexible leash. The control system of religion is also built with stone, wood, and glass. Religious architecture is designed to evoke specific psychological responses that reinforce the power of the institution. Religious architecture is an architecture of awe. Its primary purpose is to make the individual feel small and humbled. Think of a classic Gothic cathedral. Light is often filtered through stained glass windows, creating a dim, colorful, and otherworldly glow. Chants and songs have a booming, ethereal quality. The congregation is positioned as a passive audience, there to receive wisdom. Every element of the design works in concert to create an experience of awe and reverence. It communicates who is in power and what your place is within that system. No system of control can survive if competing ideas are allowed to flourish freely. According to Mulat Tazebew, a crucial pillar of the religious control system is the active management and suppression of information. This goes beyond simply promoting its own doctrine. It involves identifying, marginalizing, and often violently eliminating any alternative belief systems or critical viewpoints. This is achieved by creating a category for unacceptable thought, known as heresy. A heretic is not just someone who disagrees, they are a dangerous polluter of spiritual truth, a threat to the stability of the entire community. The concept of heresy is a powerful tool for maintaining ideological purity. It creates a clear boundary between acceptable and forbidden thought. By labeling a competing idea as heretical, the religious authority can dismiss it without having to engage with its substance. The idea is condemned not because it is illogical or lacks evidence, but because it deviates from the officially sanctioned truth. This creates a chilling effect on intellectual curiosity and critical inquiry. Followers learn that asking certain questions or exploring certain ideas is not just wrong but dangerous. It could lead to social ostracism, divine punishment, and the loss of one's soul. Historically, this suppression has taken many forms. It has involved the burning of books that contained challenging ideas, ensuring that alternative narratives were physically erased from history. It has involved the public shaming, imprisonment, and execution of individuals who dared to voice dissenting opinions, making a terrifying example for anyone else who might consider straying from the path. Think of the Inquisitions or the many religious wars fought over doctrinal differences. These were not just conflicts of faith, they were brutal campaigns to enforce ideological monopoly. The goal was to ensure that there was only one source of truth, one narrative, controlled by one institution. Even in modern times when physical violence is less common, the methods of suppression continue in more subtle forms. Heretics are now more likely to be labeled as misguided, evil, or agents of a secular agenda. They are subject to character assassination and social exclusion from the community. Their ideas are censored or systematically ignored within the religious information ecosystem. The fundamental strategy remains the same: to create an environment where the official doctrine is the only visible and viable option. By controlling the flow of information and punishing dissent, the system protects itself from the one thing it fears most: a populace that thinks for itself. A large-scale control system requires resources. Religious systems developed tithing to ensure revenue. Followers have a sacred duty to give a portion of their income, often 10%. It is presented as an act of worship. By linking giving to divine commandment, the system transforms a financial transaction into a moral obligation. Refusing to tithe is robbing God. Paying the tithe promises spiritual blessings. This creates pressure to contribute. This ensures a steady income stream, allowing institutions to accumulate wealth. This wealth translates into earthly power. It fuels the expansion of the institution's power. The religious control system, as described by Mulat Tazebew, is not a fleeting phenomenon. It is a multi-generational project. Its most profound impact is the creation of a legacy of obedience, a cultural inheritance where submission to authority is passed down from parents to children as a primary virtue. When a child is born into a world where the highest ideal is unquestioning faith and obedience to a divine and priestly authority, their psychological development is fundamentally shaped by this framework. They learn from their earliest moments that their own critical faculties are not to be trusted. This upbringing cultivates what Tazebew calls a psychology of subservience. The child learns that truth is not something to be discovered through curiosity and investigation, but something to be received from an external authority. They are taught that doubt is a sin and questioning is a sign of arrogance. This conditioning discourages independent thought and rewards conformity. The individual is trained to look outside of themselves for answers, for moral guidance, and for permission. This creates adults who are often uncomfortable with ambiguity, and who may seek out new authority figures to follow even if they leave their original faith. This legacy has far-reaching consequences that extend beyond the religious sphere. A population trained for generations to accept dogma without question becomes more susceptible to other forms of control. They are more likely to accept the pronouncements of political leaders, to believe state propaganda, and to follow societal norms without critical examination. The mental habits learned in the church, mosque, or temple, deference to authority, acceptance of a single narrative, and suspicion of outsiders, are easily transferred to the realm of the state. The religious system, in effect, preconditions the population for governmental control. It plows the mental fields, making them fertile for the seeds of secular ideology. Therefore, the ultimate impact of the religious control system is the creation of a docile and compliant citizenry. It is the normalization of a hierarchical power structure where a small group at the top makes the rules and the masses at the bottom are expected to follow. This, Tazebew concludes, is the final brilliant achievement of the blueprint. It doesn't just control individuals in the present, it shapes the very culture to ensure that future generations will be born into a world where obedience feels natural, right, and good. The system perpetuates itself not just through its institutions, but through the very minds of the people it has created. As societies moved away from religious rule, a new system of authority was needed. Mulat Tazebew argues that governments adapted the existing religious blueprint, replacing sacred texts with the Constitution. This document is presented as the supreme source of law and order, a secular text with unquestionable authority. Its authors are elevated and the document is treated as sacrosanct. This places the state's rules beyond easy criticism. Constitutions are written in complex language, creating dependency on interpreters. The Constitution becomes a symbol of justice, providing justification for state power. It is the anchor that moors the ship of state, legitimizing government actions as the execution of a sacred pact. With a new holy book, the state requires a new priesthood to interpret and enforce it. Mulat Tazebew identifies politicians, judges, and high-level bureaucrats as gatekeepers between the Constitution and the people. They claim special knowledge to administer the state, interpreting the national scripture for the citizenry. Every religion needs a chosen people, a community of believers. In the governmental blueprint, Tazebew explains, this is the concept of the nation. A nation is not a natural entity, it is a carefully constructed idea. It is the myth that millions of strangers who will never meet and may have very different cultures and interests are actually part of a single unified family. This myth is essential for creating a sense of collective identity that can command loyalty and sacrifice. The government works tirelessly to manufacture this sense of nationhood, to transform a random assortment of individuals into we, the people. This manufacturing process relies on the creation of a shared story, a national mythology. This story usually involves a heroic founding, a struggle against a common enemy, and a set of cherished values that supposedly define the national character, like freedom, equality, or resilience. These stories are taught in schools, celebrated on national holidays, and repeated endlessly in political speeches. They are often simplified and romanticized, glossing over historical complexities and contradictions to present a clean, inspiring narrative. The goal is not historical accuracy. The goal is to create an emotional bond among citizens and a shared sense of destiny. Symbols are critical tools in this process of manufacturing a nation. The national flag becomes a holy icon. The national anthem is a sacred hymn. The eagle, the lion, or some other powerful animal is adopted as a totem for the national tribe. These symbols are invested with deep emotional meaning through constant repetition and ritual. They serve as constant, visible reminders of the individual's membership in the larger national community. Saluting the flag or singing the anthem becomes a performative act of faith in the religion of the state, reinforcing one's identity as a loyal member of the congregation. This manufactured national identity creates a powerful us versus them dynamic, just as religious communities do. Other nations are cast as rivals or potential threats, which strengthens the unity and cohesion within one's own group. This sense of external threat can be used to justify military spending, restrictions on civil liberties, and demands for greater loyalty from the citizenry. According to Tazebew, the idea of the nation is the government's most successful work of fiction. It is a powerful myth that binds people together, making them willing to pay taxes, obey laws, and even die for a collective entity that exists primarily in their shared imagination. To legitimize its power, the modern state needed an origin story that did not rely on divine right. The solution was the myth of the social contract. The government's power is freely given from below. In a natural state without rules, life was chaotic. Free individuals chose to surrender freedoms to a central authority. In exchange, the government would provide security and protection for their remaining rights. This reframes the relationship between citizen and state as a voluntary agreement, creating the illusion of consent. However, when did any of us actually sign this contract? The social contract is not a historical event, it is a justification for a pre-existing power structure. It engineers a problem and then presents the government as the one and only solution, ensuring our dependency. Just as religion used architecture to inspire awe and submission, the modern state uses its buildings and monuments to project its power and legitimize its authority. Mulat Tazebew directs our attention to the design of government buildings. Think of the typical state capitol, Supreme Court, or Parliament building. They are rarely modest, functional structures. Instead, they are often designed in a grand, classical style using Greek columns and Roman domes. This architectural choice is deliberate. It is meant to associate the modern state with the perceived glory, wisdom, and endurance of these ancient empires. The sheer scale of these buildings is a key part of their message. They are designed to be imposing and monumental. Their high ceilings, vast halls, and heavy stone construction make the individual citizen feel small and insignificant by comparison. When you stand before a massive courthouse with its towering pillars and stern facade, you are receiving a nonverbal message about the immense power of the law and the state it represents. The building itself communicates that the institution is far more important and permanent than any single person. It is an architecture of intimidation, designed to command respect and discourage defiance before a single law is even read. Monuments and memorials play a similar role in this secular religion. Statues of national heroes, war memorials, and eternal flames are the state's version of religious icons and relics. They are sacred sites designed to evoke strong emotions of patriotism, gratitude, and collective grief. They provide physical focal points for the national mythology, turning abstract historical narratives into tangible places of pilgrimage and reverence. These monuments are not just about remembering the past, they are about shaping the present. They tell citizens which figures to venerate, which sacrifices to honor, and which version of history to accept as true. This architecture of power creates a physical landscape that constantly reinforces the state's narrative. From the grand Capitol building on the hill to the soldier's statue in the town square, the environment is saturated with symbols of government authority and national identity. You cannot escape the presence of the state because it is literally built into the world around you. According to Tazebew, these structures are not merely functional or decorative. They are essential tools of psychological conditioning. They are the stone and steel sermons of the state, wordlessly preaching a constant message of power, permanence, and the citizen's duty to obey. The ideology of the state is solidified through ritual and repetition, serving the same psychological function as religious rites. They transform abstract concepts like loyalty and patriotism into deeply felt emotional experiences. A common example is the daily Pledge of Allegiance recited by schoolchildren. The singing of the national anthem before events creates unity and collective identity. Elections are presented as sacred ceremonies in the democratic state. This process reinforces faith in the political system, giving citizens a sense of ownership. These rituals are a form of mass hypnosis, creating an emotional response of loyalty to the state. If the state is to secure its power for future generations, it must control the minds of the young. Mulat Tazebew identifies the system of compulsory public education as one of the most powerful tools for governmental indoctrination. On the surface, schools are presented as neutral places of learning, designed to equip children with knowledge and skills for a successful life. However, beneath this noble purpose lies a deeper, hidden curriculum, the creation of a specific type of citizen. The state education system is designed to produce individuals who are obedient, compliant, and who accept the fundamental legitimacy of the government's authority without question. From a young age, children are taught a very specific, government-approved version of history and civics. This curriculum is carefully crafted to present the nation's story in the most positive light possible. The nation's founders are portrayed as heroic figures, its wars are framed as just and necessary, and its political system is presented as the most advanced and desirable form of government. Contradictory facts, historical atrocities, and critical perspectives are often downplayed or omitted entirely. The goal is not to create critical historians but to instill a deep and abiding sense of patriotism and pride in the nation. The very structure of the school day conditions children for a life of compliance within a hierarchical system. They learn to obey the authority of the teacher without question, to follow a strict schedule dictated by bells, to sit in neat rows, and to ask for permission to speak or even to move. This environment trains them to be passive recipients of information rather than active, critical thinkers. It socializes them into accepting that their time and activities will be managed by an external authority. This, Tazebew argues, is perfect preparation for a future life as a compliant worker and citizen in a bureaucratic society. The education system also defines the boundaries of acceptable thought. It teaches students what the important questions are and provides them with the official answers. Subjects that encourage fundamental critiques of government or economic systems are often marginalized. The focus is on producing functional members of the existing system, not on empowering individuals to challenge that system. The school, therefore, acts as a factory for citizenship. It takes the raw material of a child's mind and molds it into a finished product, an adult who has internalized the values, beliefs, and behaviors that the state requires to maintain its power. Divine law provides a rigid code of conduct. In the secular state, this is performed by the legal system. The law is presented as a neutral system for resolving disputes. However, the law also functions as a form of state dogma, designed to enforce compliance. The legal system creates a world of black and white, simplifying social control. Once a law is on the books, obedience is expected. The complexity of the law makes the average citizen completely dependent on legal professionals. The law serves to legitimize the state's use of violence. The system of law is the state's primary instrument for converting raw power into legitimate authority. Every large-scale institution needs a reliable source of funding, and the modern state is the largest institution of all. The religious system perfected the model of the tithe, a moral obligation to give a portion of one's income to the church. Mulat Tazebew argues that the state adopted this model and secularized it in the form of taxation. Taxation is presented as a civic duty, the price we pay for a civilized society. It is the necessary contribution that every citizen makes to fund public services like roads, schools, and defense. This is the public narrative, the story that makes the system palatable. However, Tazebew urges us to look at the underlying mechanics. Taxation is not a voluntary donation. It is a compulsory extraction of wealth from the population, enforced by the full power of the state. Failure to pay taxes can result in the seizure of property, hefty fines, and imprisonment. In this sense, it is far more coercive than the traditional religious tithe, which relied primarily on psychological and social pressure. Taxation is a demand backed by the threat of state-sanctioned violence. It is the financial engine that fuels the entire government apparatus, from the salaries of bureaucrats to the funding of the military. This constant and massive flow of revenue gives the state enormous power. It allows the government to grow its influence and control over society by creating vast bureaucracies and social programs. These programs, while sometimes beneficial, also create a relationship of dependency between the citizen and the state. People come to rely on the government for their education, their healthcare, their retirement income, and their safety net. This dependency makes them less likely to challenge the system that provides for them, even if they disagree with its other actions. The state uses the money it collects to make itself indispensable. The system of taxation, Tazebew concludes, is the ultimate testament to the state's authority. It is the clearest expression of the government's power to command the resources of its citizens. The debate in modern politics is rarely about whether taxation is legitimate, but only about how high the rates should be and how the money should be spent. The fundamental principle that the state has a right to a portion of every citizen's labor is accepted as a given, a foundational dogma of the secular faith. It is the secular tithe, a non-negotiable tribute paid not to God, but to the new divine entity, the nation-state. In the religious control system, the ultimate crime was heresy, the act of challenging the core doctrines of the faith. The heretic was seen as a spiritual traitor, a threat to the salvation of the entire community. In the governmental blueprint, Mulat Tazebew explains, this concept is mirrored in the crime of treason. Treason is the ultimate offense against the state. It is not just breaking a law, it is the act of betraying the nation itself. The traitor is cast as the most vile of all criminals, an enemy who threatens the very existence of the national family and everything it stands for. The concept of treason serves the same function as heresy. It creates a category for the most dangerous and unacceptable form of dissent. It draws the ultimate line that cannot be crossed. While citizens might be allowed to protest a specific policy or criticize a particular leader, the act of working against the state itself is deemed an unforgivable sin. The charge of treason is the state's most powerful weapon for neutralizing its most serious opponents. It reframes fundamental opposition not as a political disagreement but as a profound moral and existential betrayal that must be punished with the utmost severity, often death. The definition of treason or related crimes like sedition can often be vague and flexible. This allows the state to apply the label to a wide range of activities that it deems threatening. This can include leaking embarrassing government secrets, advocating for the overthrow of the government, or providing aid to a designated enemy. The enemy itself is a fluid concept defined by the state to suit its geopolitical goals. The label of traitor or enemy of the state is a powerful tool for discrediting individuals and movements that challenge the power structure, isolating them from the general population, and justifying their persecution. This creates a powerful psychological boundary for citizens. They learn that there is a limit to acceptable criticism. They can question the government, but they must never question its right to exist or threaten its fundamental security. The fear of being labeled a traitor fosters a sense of caution and self-censorship. It encourages people to keep their dissent within the safe, officially sanctioned channels of political discourse. According to Tazebew, the crime of treason is the secular equivalent of blasphemy. It protects the sanctity of the state, ensuring that the new God of the nation can never be fundamentally challenged by its own believers. The ultimate goal of the governmental control system, much like its religious predecessor, is to create a legacy of compliance. It is to cultivate a population that has so deeply internalized the state's ideology that obedience becomes, honestly, second nature. Mulat Tazebew concludes that the modern citizen is the secular equivalent of the believer. The ideal citizen is not a fiercely independent critical thinker who constantly challenges authority. Instead, the ideal citizen is a loyal, patriotic, and compliant individual who has faith in the nation's myths, respects its symbols, and trusts in its institutions to manage society. This process of creating believers actually begins in childhood. Through state-controlled education, national rituals, and the constant messaging of the media, the child is slowly molded into a citizen. They learn the national catechism, the stories of the founding fathers, the verses of the national anthem, and the articles of the constitutional faith. They are trained to see the world through a national lens, to feel pride in their country's achievements and, shame for its enemies. They learn that their primary political identity is not as an individual but as a member of the nation, an American, a Russian, a Briton, a Nigerian. This creates a powerful psychological inheritance. Generations are born into a system where the state's authority is a given, a natural and unquestionable feature of the world, like the weather or the seasons. The fundamental narratives, the social contract, the rule of law, the glory of the nation, are not presented as contestable ideas, but as foundational truths. This creates a culture of deference. Citizens learn to look to the government for solutions, to trust in experts and officials, and to view radical challenges to the system as dangerous and naive. The habit of obedience is passed down as common sense. In the end, Tazebew's analysis suggests that we have not escaped the old models of control. We've simply updated the terminology and the aesthetics. We've traded the priest for the politician, the holy book for the constitution, and the tithe for the tax. The underlying structure of power, a hierarchical system that demands faith and obedience in exchange for a promise of security and order, remains, honestly, startlingly intact. The legacy of the governmental blueprint is the creation of the modern citizen believer, a person conditioned from birth to have faith in the secular religion of the state and to comply with its commands. When we place the systems of religion and government side by side, the similarities are impossible to ignore. It's as if both systems are working from the same instruction manual, a shared playbook on the art of social engineering. This act is about laying the pages of these two playbooks open to compare their strategies. The core principle is the establishment of a higher authority, positioned as absolute and beyond reproach. Both systems understand that for control to be stable, the source of that control must be mystified. From this shared foundation, both playbooks outline a similar set of tools and tactics. Both require interpreters, a foundational text, powerful narratives, ritual, mechanisms for funding and punishment. The parallels are systematic, suggesting a common logic at work. Is this parallel development independent, or a direct lineage where the state studied the religious model? In this act, we will explore this claim by comparing their most potent tools, starting with their most sacred texts. At the heart of both systems lies a single foundational document. For religion, it's the Holy Book. For the state, it's the Constitution. Both are presented as the ultimate source of truth and law for their respective domains. The Holy Book claims its authority from God, the Constitution claims its authority from the people. Despite these different origins, their function within the control system is honestly identical. They serve as the infallible word, the central text that provides the ultimate justification for the entire power structure. They are the anchor points designed to be revered, not to be fundamentally questioned by the masses they govern. Let's compare how they are treated. Holy books like the Bible or the Quran are considered sacred. They are often handled with special care, and their original words are preserved with meticulous devotion. Similarly, national constitutions, especially original copies, are treated like holy relics. They're displayed in grand, temple-like buildings, encased in protective chambers filled with inert gas. This act of preservation is not just about history, it is a ritual that reinforces the document's sacred status. It sends a clear message. This text is not like other texts. It is permanent, special, and the bedrock of our entire world. Consider the language used to describe them. Believers speak of the divine wisdom and perfect truth contained within their holy book. In parallel, politicians and judges speak of the profound wisdom and enduring principles of the Constitution and its founding fathers. In both cases, the authors are elevated to a mythical status, seen as possessing a wisdom far beyond that of ordinary people today. This mystification serves to shield the documents from modern criticism, to suggest that these texts might be flawed, outdated, or products of a biased and less enlightened time is to commit a form of heresy or unpatriotic blasphemy. The most critical parallel, however, is their role in legitimizing power. The priest justifies his authority by pointing to a verse in the Holy Book. The president or prime minister justifies their actions from waging war to collecting taxes by claiming they are upholding the Constitution. Both documents provide the ultimate because I said so for the ruling class. They are the final court of appeal, a tool to end debate and command obedience. They function as the operating system's source code, written in a language that only a select few are authorized to interpret, ensuring that power remains centralized and its foundations appear, honestly, unshakable. Section 3. The Keepers of Meaning, the Clergy and the Judiciary. An infallible text requires official interpreters. In religion, this is the clergy. In government, this is the judiciary. These two groups perform the exact same function. They are the exclusive gatekeepers of meaning. Both the clergy and the judiciary are presented as uniquely qualified. Both groups are set apart from the general population, cultivating an aura of authority. You are meant to receive the official interpretation from these designated authorities. This power of interpretation is the ultimate power. It allows the system to adapt to new circumstances without changing its foundational text. Application can be molded by the ruling class to suit their current needs. The decision is handed down and is expected to be accepted as the final word. The system's core tenets are never truly open to public renegotiation. Section 4. Temples of Power, Churches versus Courthouses. A system of authority needs more than just texts and interpreters. It needs a physical presence. It needs buildings that project its power and inspire the correct emotional response in the populace. Here we see another stark parallel, the religious temple versus the state's courthouse. Both are architectural marvels designed not just for function but for psychological impact. Tazebew argues that both churches and courthouses are designed as theaters of power, stages where the authority of the system is performed and reinforced. They are deliberately crafted to make the individual feel small and the institution feel immense. Let us compare their typical design features. The Grand Cathedral and the Supreme Court building often share a common architectural language. They use towering columns, high vaulted ceilings, and vast open interiors. They are constructed from enduring materials like stone and marble to convey a sense of permanence and timeless authority. When you enter either space, the acoustics change. Your voice is hushed, and the sounds of the officials, the priest's sermon or the judge's gavel, reverberate with an amplified, almost supernatural authority. Both spaces are engineered to be awe-inspiring, to command reverence and silence before a single word is spoken. The layout within these buildings also follows the same script. In a church, the congregation sits in neat rows in the nave, their attention focused forward on the raised altar and pulpit, where the priest performs the sacred rituals. In a courtroom, the public and jury sit in their designated areas, their attention focused forward on the raised judge's bench, where the judge presides over the legal proceedings. In both scenarios, the architecture creates a clear physical hierarchy. It separates the powerful actors from the passive audience, reinforcing who is in charge and who is there to listen, watch, and obey the final judgment. These buildings become sacred sites within their communities. A town's identity is often marked by its main church and its main courthouse, often located near each other in the central square. They are the twin pillars of spiritual and secular authority. They are places of major life events, baptisms and weddings in the church, lawsuits and criminal sentences in the courthouse. They are the physical anchors of the control system, constantly reminding the population through their very presence of the two great powers that govern their lives. They are not just buildings, they are sermons in stone, preaching a constant message of hierarchy and order. Section 5. Sacred Narratives, Creation Myths versus Founding Stories. Every community is held together by a story. To build a cohesive group, you must give them a shared past. Religion and government both understand this principle perfectly, and both employ a foundational narrative to forge a collective identity. In religion, this is the creation myth. It is the story of how the world began, how humanity came to be, and what their special relationship is with the divine creator. This story provides a sense of ultimate origin and purpose. It answers the fundamental question, where did we come from, and establishes the cosmic order in which the religion operates. The state has its own secular version of the creation myth, the founding story. This is the tale of the nation's birth. It is a heroic narrative, often involving a revolutionary struggle against an oppressor, a band of brothers with a visionary idea, and a dramatic moment of creation, like the signing of a declaration or a constitution. These founding fathers are elevated to the status of mythical heroes, their flaws erased, and their wisdom exaggerated. This story answers the citizens' fundamental question, where did our nation come from, and establishes the moral and political order of the state. Both types of stories serve to legitimize the current power structure. The creation myth establishes that the world was designed in a certain way by God, which justifies the authority of the priests who speak for him. The founding story establishes that the nation was created based on certain sacred principles, like liberty or justice, which justifies the authority of the government that claims to be the guardian of those principles. Both narratives are presented as the sacred source from which all current legitimacy flows. They are the once upon a time that gives meaning and authority to the happily ever after of the established order. These narratives are not treated as mere history, they are taught as sacred lore. Children learn the creation myth in religious school and the founding story in public school. Both are simplified into easily memorable tales, reinforced with holidays, pageants, and monuments. To challenge the core tenets of the creation myth is heresy. To challenge the heroic narrative of the founding story is to be unpatriotic. In both cases, the stories are protected from critical inquiry because they are too important to the system's stability. They are the foundational fictions that create the we in whose name the priests and politicians rule. Section 6. The Path to Salvation, Divine Grace versus the Rule of Law. Both religion and government present themselves as saviors, offering a path away from chaos toward security and order. Religion says the problem is sin, solved through divine grace and religious institutions. The state says the problem is a chaotic state of nature, solved through the rule of law. Salvation is a collective project. Both systems define salvation in a way that makes conformity a social necessity. Ultimately, both paths to salvation require faith. They offer salvation from a problem they've defined, demanding faith and obedience in return. Section 7. Rituals of Allegiance, Prayer versus Pledges. An ideology cannot survive as a mere set of ideas. It must be acted out. It must be performed. Both religion and government have developed a powerful set of rituals designed to instill a sense of allegiance and belonging. These are not just symbolic gestures, they're actually techniques of psychological conditioning. Let us compare one of the most fundamental rituals from each playbook: the act of prayer in religion and the pledge of allegiance in the state. Both are formalized, repetitive declarations of loyalty to the higher power, designed to be performed regularly from a young age. Religious prayer is a direct communication with the divine authority. It often involves a specific physical posture, such as kneeling or bowing, that physically communicates submission and reverence. It is a moment of acknowledging one's dependence on God and reaffirming one's faith in His power and wisdom. The Pledge of Allegiance is a direct parallel. It's a formal communication with the state's symbolic authority. It also involves a specific physical posture, standing, with hand over heart, that communicates respect and loyalty. It is a moment of acknowledging one's membership in the nation and reaffirming one's faith in its ideals. The power of these rituals lies in their endless repetition. A devout person may pray multiple times a day. A school child may recite the pledge every single morning for years. This constant repetition bypasses the critical mind and embeds the act of allegiance deep into one's muscle memory and emotional landscape. The words become automatic, the feelings of reverence or patriotism become ingrained. You don't think about the meaning of the pledge each time you say it, you perform the ritual and feel the associated emotion of belonging. It's a process of habituation, training the person to be loyal without conscious thought. Both rituals also serve as public displays of conformity. When an entire congregation prays together or an entire classroom recites the pledge in unison, it creates a powerful sense of group unity. It also makes anyone who refuses to participate immediately visible as an outsider, a dissenter. This creates immense social pressure to conform. It's just easier to go along with the ritual than to face the social consequences of refusal. In this way, prayer and the pledge are not just personal acts of faith, they are public ceremonies that enforce ideological discipline and reinforce the boundaries of the community. Section 8. The Ultimate Sin, Heresy versus Treason. Every control system must define an ultimate crime, an act so terrible that it represents a betrayal of the entire order. This ultimate sin serves to police the boundaries of acceptable thought and action. In religion, this crime is heresy. A heretic is not just a sinner who breaks a rule, they're a traitor to God who challenges the very foundation of the faith. They question the core dogma, offer an alternative interpretation of the Holy Book, or deny the authority of the clergy. Heresy is treated as a spiritual disease that can infect and destroy the entire community of believers. The state's parallel to heresy is the crime of treason. A traitor is not just a criminal who breaks a law, they're a traitor to the nation who challenges the very foundation of the state's authority. They leak state secrets, provide aid to a designated enemy, or actively work to overthrow the government. Treason is treated as a political disease that can infect and destroy the entire nation. In both cases, the crime is framed not as an offense against a specific person or rule, but as an existential threat to the collective as a whole, the body of Christ or the body politic. The punishment for both crimes is historically the most severe imaginable. Heretics were excommunicated, tortured, and often burned at the stake. Traitors have been exiled, imprisoned for life, or executed. The extreme nature of the punishment sends a powerful message to everyone else. This is the one line you must never cross. You can be a sinner and be forgiven, you can be a lawbreaker and serve your time, but if you challenge the fundamental basis of the system's authority, you will be utterly and completely destroyed. This creates a powerful deterrent that silences the most radical forms of dissent. This parallel reveals the core anxiety of both systems. Their greatest fear is not random acts of disobedience, but a fundamental challenge to their legitimacy. They fear the person who stands up and says, "Your God is false," or "Your government has no right to rule." The concepts of heresy and treason are the weapons they created to crush this kind of fundamental threat. They are tools designed to protect the central dogma, whether it is religious or political, from being questioned. They are the ultimate defense mechanism for a power structure built on a foundation of unquestionable belief. To motivate people to endure hardship and obey the rules, both systems offer a powerful promise of a future paradise. This is the utopian vision, the perfect world that can be achieved if only everyone follows the prescribed path. For religion, this promise is heaven. It is a perfect, otherworldly realm of eternal bliss, peace, and communion with God. This life on earth is presented as a temporary, flawed, and often painful trial. The suffering you endure here is insignificant compared to the infinite reward that awaits you in the next life if you remain faithful and obedient. The state offers a secular version of this paradise, the ideal state or the more perfect union. This is the promise of a future on earth where there is perfect justice, equality, prosperity, and security for all citizens. This ideal is always just over the horizon. Politicians constantly speak of building a better future, healing the nation, or achieving peace and prosperity for all. This future paradise is the justification for the sacrifices demanded today. You must pay your taxes, obey the laws, and perhaps even fight in wars, all in the service of building this promised land for future generations. Both promises of paradise serve a crucial function. They defer gratification. The religious believer is told not to seek ultimate happiness in this world, but to wait for the next. This makes them more willing to accept injustice, poverty, and suffering in the present. The citizen is told that the perfect society is a long-term project, requiring patience and sacrifice now for the benefit of their children or grandchildren. This encourages them to accept the flaws and injustices of the current system, believing they are contributing to a future good. Both promises are powerful tools for managing present-day discontent. The key difference, and a critical one, is that heaven is, by definition, unfalsifiable. No one can come back and report that it is not as advertised. The state's promised paradise, however, is an earthly one, and its constant failure to arrive can lead to disillusionment. Yet the promise is endlessly renewable. When the promised prosperity doesn't materialize, it is blamed on the nation's enemies, political opponents, or a lack of faith from the citizens themselves. The ideal remains a potent motivational tool, a secular heaven that keeps people striving and sacrificing for a future that, by design, never fully arrives. For a system to present itself as a savior, it must first convince you that you are in need of saving. Both religion and government achieve this by placing a fundamental burden of guilt or obligation onto every individual from birth. The religious version, as Tazebew has noted, is the doctrine of original sin. This is the idea that you are born inherently flawed, tainted by the sin of your ancestors. You enter the world already guilty, already in debt to God. This creates a baseline of unworthiness that you can only erase by submitting to the authority and grace of the Church. The state's parallel to this is the concept of assumed consent, often packaged within the myth of the social contract. You are born within the borders of a nation-state, and by the mere fact of your birth and continued residence, your consent to be governed is assumed. You are born already in debt to the state, with an obligation to obey its laws and pay its taxes. You have not signed a contract, you have not agreed to the terms, but you are treated as if you have. This creates a baseline of obligation that you can only fulfill by being a compliant citizen. It is a form of original political debt. Both concepts place the individual in a defensive position from the start. You are not a free agent who can choose whether or not to engage with the system. You are born into it, already implicated, already owing a debt. Your only choice is how to service that debt, through religious piety or through civic duty. This initial burden of guilt or obligation is a powerful psychological tool. It undermines self-sovereignty and fosters a sense of dependency on the institution that claims to hold the key to your redemption, whether that redemption is spiritual or political. This is perhaps the most subtle and brilliant parallel in the entire playbook. Both systems have engineered a way to make you feel responsible for your own subjugation. Your guilt in the religious system is your own fault, a part of your nature. Your obligation in the state system is framed as a result of your own implied consent. In both cases, the system avoids the appearance of being a coercive force imposing itself upon you. Instead, it presents itself as the benevolent authority that is simply helping you manage the burden that was already yours to begin with. Finally, every mass movement needs a simple, powerful symbol that can unite its followers and represent the entirety of its belief system in a single image. This symbol must be emotionally resonant and instantly recognizable. It is the banner under which the faithful will gather, the icon they will defend, and the emblem that will mark them as part of the tribe. For many branches of Christianity, the ultimate symbol is the cross. It represents sacrifice, redemption, and the core narrative of their faith. It is an object of veneration, a symbol worn as jewelry, and an icon that marks their sacred spaces. The state's direct equivalent is the national flag. The flag is the ultimate symbol of the nation, representing its history, its people, and its ideals in a simple geometric design. It is the secular cross. It is treated with a parallel form of reverence. There are complex rules for its proper handling, display, and disposal known as the flag code. It is flown over government buildings, carried into battle, and draped over the coffins of soldiers. Citizens are encouraged to display it at their homes, and children are taught to pledge their allegiance to it. It is the single most potent symbol in the civil religion of the state. Both symbols derive their power from their ability to evoke strong emotions. The cross can bring a believer to tears, reminding them of Christ's sacrifice. The flag can stir deep feelings of patriotism and pride or profound grief when seen at a military funeral. This emotional power is then harnessed by the institution. Leaders use the presence of the symbol to add legitimacy and emotional weight to their speeches and ceremonies. The symbol becomes a shorthand for the entire ideology, a trigger for a pre-programmed emotional and psychological response of loyalty and reverence. By placing the cross and the flag side by side, we see the playbook in its clearest form. Both religion and government need to distill their complex systems of control into an object that people can love, cherish, and be willing to die for. The symbol becomes more important than the individual. It represents the eternal institution. Whether it is the sacrifice of a martyr for the cross or the sacrifice of a soldier for the flag, the underlying demand is the same. Your ultimate loyalty belongs not to yourself or to your fellow humans directly, but to the abstract symbol and the power structure it represents. No system of control is absolute. The human mind retains a capacity for independent thought. Dissent is an inherent consequence of consciousness. Perceiving the world carries the seed of a question, threatening even entrenched orthodoxy. Systems demand unquestioning faith, but reality intrudes. Contradictions create cognitive dissonance. For some, friction polishes a lens of critical awareness. Systems inadvertently create opposition. The more seamless the story, the more jarring any inconsistency. Now we turn to stories of resistance, the whistleblowers, reformers, and revolutionaries. They expose the machinery behind the curtain. Their stories are a testament to the human spirit. Every major movement, every revolution, and every reformation begins not with a crowd, but with a single mind. It starts with one person who experiences a moment of profound doubt. This is the first spark, often a quiet internal one. It might be a child asking a question, or a clerk noticing a discrepancy. The individual is faced with a choice: ignore the inconsistency, or nurture that spark of doubt and see where it leads. This initial question is the most courageous step. To even formulate the thought, "What if this is all wrong?" is to commit a form of internal heresy. This act requires intellectual bravery, a willingness to risk one's own sense of security for the sake of truth. It can be born from a sense of injustice, a feeling of betrayal, or a deep empathy for those harmed by the system. This personal emotional connection to the system's negative consequences can be a more powerful catalyst for doubt. This shifts the focus from metaphysics to ethics, a far more dangerous ground for the powers that be. From this first spark, a chain reaction can begin. A whistleblower is an insider who exposes an organization's secrets. They've seen the contradictions and deception. Their power comes from credibility, providing first-hand proof. Whistleblowing betrays institutional trust, challenging its moral authority, like Jan Hus exposing church corruption, or Edward Snowden revealing mass surveillance. They leak internal documents for the world to see. The system attacks them, discrediting them, because it cannot refute the message. They break the code of silence, revealing the official narrative as a lie. Some choose the path of the reformer, the individual who stays within the institution and attempts to change it from the inside. They're a true believer in the institution's stated ideals. The reformer's goal isn't to destroy the system, but to purify it. The reformer faces immense resistance from the established power structure. Martin Luther is a classic example of the religious reformer. In the political realm, reformers often work within the system trying to pass new laws. They often find that the system is designed to absorb and neutralize fundamental change. The system isn't broken, it's functioning exactly as it was designed to. When a system declares an idea to be heresy, it gives that idea a strange kind of power. By forbidding it, the system signals that the idea is dangerous and therefore important. While the original heretic may be silenced, their ideas can take on a life of their own. The act of suppression can turn a simple dissenting opinion into a compelling narrative of forbidden knowledge. The legacy of the heretic is the proof that you cannot truly kill an idea. You can kill a person, you can burn a book, but the thought itself can replicate like a virus. The survival of heretical ideas depends on their ability to resonate with the lived experience of the people. An idea that speaks to a felt injustice or a deep human yearning for freedom has the potential to endure. The heretic's legacy is a powerful reminder that the official truth of any given era is not permanent. The journey from individual doubt to societal transformation requires a movement. Only a collective movement can challenge powerful institutions. A movement begins when isolated individuals discover they aren't alone. It creates a space where forbidden thoughts can be spoken aloud. It organizes protests to demonstrate collective power. The movement builds a counter-state, demonstrating alternative ways of organizing society. The system will use all tools to disrupt the movement. Success depends on withstanding pressure and persuading a critical mass. To break free from a system of control, a profound psychological transformation is required. This de-indoctrination dismantles a deeply ingrained framework shaping identity, relationships, and reality. It's a slow, painful, disorienting process, like waking from a lifelong dream. The first emotional stage involves anger and betrayal as trust in authorities shatters. Then, an intellectual reconstruction begins, seeking new information to fill the void. The final social stage often means losing community, requiring a search for new connections. De-indoctrination is complete when a new identity, framework, and support community are built. A powerful institution, whether religious or governmental, does not simply crumble when faced with dissent. It is a resilient organism with a powerful immune system designed to neutralize threats. When whistleblowers, reformers, or movements emerge, the system deploys a range of sophisticated strategies to fight back. These strategies go beyond mere brute force and suppression. As Tazebew points out, the most effective methods are often more subtle, designed to contain the dissent and, if possible, to co-opt its energy for the system's own purposes, thereby strengthening the institution in the long run. The first line of defense is to ignore and marginalize. The dissenting voices are given no platform in the official media. They're treated as insignificant, a fringe minority not worthy of serious attention. The goal is to create an information vacuum where the majority of the population remains unaware that a credible challenge to the authority even exists. If ignoring the dissent is no longer possible, the next strategy is to ridicule and discredit the messengers. They're portrayed as crazy, immoral, selfish, or naive. Their personal lives are scrutinized for any flaw that can be used to assassinate their character, diverting public attention away from the substance of their critique. If the movement continues to grow, the system may shift to a strategy of co-option. This is a particularly insidious tactic. The authorities will appear to listen to the dissenters' concerns. They'll adopt some of the movement's language and symbols. They might create a new government committee to study the problem or a church council to discuss reform. This creates the illusion of progress and can placate the more moderate members of the movement, causing it to lose momentum. The system makes small superficial concessions to avoid making fundamental structural changes. It's like adding a new coat of paint to a rotten structure to make it look sound. Finally, the system can use the strategy of division. It will seek to exploit any internal disagreements within the dissenting movement. It will highlight the differences between moderate and radical factions, offering deals to the moderates to isolate the radicals. It will use agents provocateurs to encourage violence or extremism within the movement, which can then be used to justify a public crackdown and discredit the entire group. The system understands the principle of divide and conquer. By breaking the unity of the opposition, it can defeat a movement that it might not have been able to crush through direct confrontation alone. The path of the dissenter is never easy. Speaking truth to a powerful system is a dangerous act, and the system is designed to make the price excruciatingly high. The system makes an example of its critics to deter others. The first cost is often professional and financial. Whistleblowers are fired. The social cost can be even more devastating, often means being ostracized. Finally, there is the ultimate price, the loss of liberty or life itself. Understanding this martyr's price is essential, secured by the immense sacrifices of those who came before us. In the eternal struggle between control and dissent, technology has always been a critical factor. The invention of the printing press, for example, was a key factor in the success of the Protestant Reformation, allowing reformers to mass-produce their critiques and bypass the Church's monopoly on information. In our own time, Mulat Tazebew's analysis would be incomplete without examining the profound impact of the internet, and digital communication technologies. These new tools have fundamentally altered the landscape of dissent, creating new opportunities for rebellion while also creating new avenues for surveillance and control. The internet has been a revolutionary tool for breaking down information monopolies. For centuries, religious and governmental authorities were able to control the narrative by controlling the primary channels of information: the pulpits, the printing presses, and the broadcast networks. The internet shatters this model. A single individual with a blog or a social media account can now potentially reach a global audience, sharing forbidden information and counter-narratives that would have once been impossible to distribute. It allows isolated dissenters to find each other, to form communities, and to organize collective action across vast geographical distances, creating networked movements that are decentralized and difficult to decapitate. Digital tools have also empowered whistleblowers and leakers on an unprecedented scale. In the past, leaking documents meant physically smuggling out reams of paper. Today, a whistleblower can copy millions of secret files onto a tiny digital storage device. Encryption technologies allow dissidents to communicate securely, hiding their conversations from the prying eyes of the state. Crowdfunding platforms allow movements to raise money from thousands of small donors around the world, freeing them from a reliance on a few wealthy patrons. Technology has, in many ways, democratized the tools of rebellion, putting powerful capabilities into the hands of ordinary people. However, this technological empowerment is a double-edged sword. The same technologies that allow dissenters to connect also create a permanent, searchable record of their activities. The digital networks that carry revolutionary messages are the same networks that governments use to conduct mass surveillance on a scale previously unimaginable. Social media can be used to spread propaganda and disinformation just as easily as it can be used to spread truth. The state can use sophisticated cyber warfare techniques to shut down dissenting websites and track down activists. The networked rebellion faces a network system of control, and the battle for the future will be fought on this new digital terrain. Our investigation into the deceptive agenda of religion and government, and the brave attempts to break free, leads to a final, crucial insight from Mulat Tazebew. The struggle for freedom is not a single event with a clear beginning and a final victory. There is no ultimate revolution that will permanently dismantle all systems of control. The very nature of power is to reassert itself, to find new forms, and to create new narratives. Therefore, the act of questioning, of being a critical investigator, is not a phase one passes through. It must be a continuous, lifelong practice. The revolution is never finished. Even successful movements can, over time, become the new establishment. A revolutionary group that overthrows a tyrannical government can become the new tyrannical government. A religious reformation that breaks away from a corrupt church can, over centuries, develop its own rigid dogmas and oppressive hierarchies. Power, once attained, has a corrupting influence. The very tools the revolutionaries used to gain power, strong leadership, ideological unity, and disciplined organization, can become the tools of a new system of control. The once liberating idea becomes the new unquestionable orthodoxy. This cyclical nature of power means that our skepticism must be constant and universal. It is not enough to question the religion you were born into or the government you currently live under. We must also be willing to critically examine our own movements, our own leaders, and our own most cherished beliefs. We must be wary of any group or ideology that demands unquestioning faith, that discourages internal dissent, or that claims to have all the answers. The moment we stop questioning our own side is the moment we begin to lay the foundations for a new system of control. Therefore, the ultimate act of breaking free is not about finding the right system to believe in. It is about embracing a permanent state of critical inquiry. It is about committing to the process of questioning itself. This is the unfinished revolution. It is a personal and collective struggle that must be renewed by each generation. It is the understanding that the price of freedom is eternal vigilance, not just against the tyrants we can see, but against the potential for tyranny within ourselves and our own movements. The goal is not to arrive at a final destination of perfect truth, but to remain faithfully on the path of asking the next question. We've uncovered how religion and government, beneath their stories of salvation and justice, operate as systems of psychological control, ancient blueprints redrawn for modern times. Our journey has been about exposing these invisible walls, revealing how power shapes belief, and challenging us to see the architecture of control for what it truly is. Religion and government mirror each other. Heretics and traitors, tithes and taxes, rituals and laws, all designed to protect their authority and extract loyalty. By recognizing these parallels, we gain the tools to decode power's disguises and see through the recycled strategies of control. The most radical act is to question your beliefs, the stories you're told, and the motives behind them. Embrace your role as an investigator. Let inquiry, not obedience, guide you toward mental sovereignty. Deconstruction frees us from inherited dogmas, but true liberation comes from building a life on principles you've tested and chosen for yourself. Empathy, reason, and voluntary community. The journey is from subject to creator, from imposed rules to an inner compass. Living without illusions means accepting uncertainty, finding security within, and engaging the world with clarity and compassion, not apathy. Freedom is not a destination, but a practice, living with open eyes, a critical mind, and an authentic heart. This is just the beginning. Continue the investigation, sharpen your discernment, and walk your own path toward truth and sovereignty. The world's narratives will keep coming. Your questions are now the compass. Thank you for joining us.